story of a pair of lungs that smoked as a team and never grew to normal size.
Watching!
Lungs are gonna need a lot of air for this.
Watching. Film the game. What? What's
Are you ready?
Okay, film theories.
I can't hear you.
Oh, copyright.
Did you know? According to one of the show's writers, Doug Lawrence, the main cast of SpongeBob SquarePants were originally based on the 7 deadly sins. Some characters' sins are obvious, like Mr. Krabs' greed, Plankton's envy, Sandy's pride, and Patrick's sloth. But the other sins are not as clear. Wrath could be Squidward because he has a bad temper. Gluttony could be Gary because of a running joke where SpongeBob must frequently feed the pet snail. Even then, it's not clear which character is supposed to be Lust. Some fans suggest Pearl because she was one of the first characters designed for the show and is often portrayed as boy crazy. Other fans suggest SpongeBob as Lust because of his deep love for his friends. However, it's likely the 7 deadly sins theme was only used as a rough guideline for designing characters and didn't stay for long. While developing SpongeBob, Steven Hillenburg drew inspiration from one of his earlier projects. It was an educational comic called Intertidal Zone, which he made while working as a marine biologist. Hillenburg later attended Cal Arts and began a career in animation working on Rocko's Modern Life. During Rocko's final season, Hillenburg was asked to come up with ideas for a funny animal show. At first, he wasn't interested in creating a new cartoon, describing the workload as torturous, but his opinion changed after meeting with a Rocko writer, Martin Olson. Olson found the Intertidal Zone comic and told Hillenburg, "What are you, crazy? This is your show." As he brainstormed ideas for new characters, Hillenburg honed in on the sea sponge because he liked their strange shapes. But he later doodled the character as a kitchen sponge and found that the square shape was a good symbol for a nerdy personality. He wanted the sponge to be innocent and genuine, like Pee Wee Herman or Jerry Lewis. In fact, while developing the pitch for SpongeBob, Hillenburg and creative director Derek Drymon would watch Jerry Lewis films for inspiration, specifically The Errand Boy. At the beginning, SpongeBob's name was actually going to be Sponge Boy, and the show was going to be called Sponge Boy Ahoy. The name was changed after the team discovered the trademark for Sponge Boy was already registered for a series called Flaming Carrot Comics.
Sponge Boy, me Bob.
The name SpongeBob came from Hillenburg's Intertidal Zone comic, which had a character named Bob the Sponge. The surname SquarePants came from an improv session between Hillenburg and Tom Kenny, the voice of SpongeBob. Kenny said the line, "What's a sponge with square pants and a tie, thinking he can get a job at a fast food restaurant?" They felt the name SquarePants fit the clean-cut and nerdy personality of the character. At one point, SpongeBob could have had the voice for Plankton. Mr. Lawrence originally auditioned for the role of SpongeBob with a voice he described as a combination of Gregory Peck and Tony the Tiger.
I'm ready. Hey, Gary, it's a beautiful day.
The staff couldn't stop laughing at his audition and decided to give him the role for Plankton instead.
The sea. So fascinating. So wonderful.
The narrator for SpongeBob has a French accent as an homage to oceanographer Jacques Cousteau. Cousteau was a pioneer of an early scuba gear system called the Aqualung. The device was used to film life underwater in a way that had never been seen before, and it inspired Hillenburg's lifelong interest in the ocean. SpongeBob originally had an opening that was completely different than the one known today. This opening sequence was created in 1997 along with the pilot episode Help Wanted. The show wouldn't debut publicly for another 2 years, and by then the opening sequence was replaced. The final opening features the actual lips of Hillenburg superimposed over a pirate named Painty the Pirate.
Who lives in a pineapple under the sea?
The melody of the theme song is very similar to an Old English sea shanty called Blow the Man Down.
I'll sing you a song, a good song of the sea to me. Way, hey, blow the man down.
Hillenburg wanted the opening to be as loud and annoying as possible to excite children, making them scream and jump and wake up their parents in the morning. SpongeBob's house also has a hidden reason behind its eccentricity. He lives in a pineapple because the fruit has been traditionally seen as a symbol of hospitality in Western countries. During the colonial era, sculptures of pineapples were common features in doorways and other architectural decorations. But this symbolism was lost on Nickelodeon executives, who thought SpongeBob's house was too bizarre. The writers actually poked fun of the executives' reaction in the pilot episode.
Yes, of course he lives in a pineapple, you silly.
Nickelodeon executives feared that the show wouldn't resonate with children. At one point, they demanded SpongeBob be a child who lives with his parents and goes to school. Hillenburg hated this idea and almost walked away from the project altogether. Ultimately, they reached a compromise where certain episodes would feature SpongeBob's parents, and he would occasionally attend boating school. The pilot episode tested well with children, and it was eventually given a green light. The show continued the storyboard-driven writing process used in Rocco, as well as Ren and Stimpy. This resulted in more visual gags and gave the show a different feel compared to script-based cartoons like The Simpsons. But it would occasionally cause internal conflict. According to animation director Andrew Overtomb, the team's animation directors and storyboarders didn't get along. The storyboarders had a specific vision for the show, and if that vision was changed in the animation process, they weren't pleased. This could go both ways, however. Sometimes storyboard writers would insist on changes after the animators started working, which would deeply annoy the animators. Steven Hillenburg and his staff never imagined SpongeBob would become a global hit. At best, they expected a level of success similar to Rocco's Modern Life or Ren and Stimpy. At the beginning of production, Hillenburg said he'd be happy doing only one season, but he actually stuck with the project for 3 seasons and a movie. According to writer Sam Henderson, Hillenburg planned to end SpongeBob after the 3rd season so they wouldn't, quote, jump the shark. There was a sense around the office that the crew were running out of fresh ideas. Kent Osborne, a writer who joined the staff for season 3, said, "I came in with a million ideas, and I'd say, hey, let's do this, and they'd say, nah, we already did one like that." And not just SpongeBob. Story editor Meriwether Williams had worked on Angry Beavers, and she'd say, oh, we did that on Beavers. SpongeBob was one of the network's most popular shows, and Nickelodeon made sure the show continued. But the staff didn't share the network's enthusiasm. It turned out the process of creating SpongeBob was grueling, time-consuming, and paid poorly. One writer for SpongeBob stated in an interview with Hogan's Alley, "You'd be horrified to hear what we all got paid. When you compare our salaries to the amount of money our work generated, we may well be the lowest paid people in the history of the planet." After the first movie, Hillenburg walked away from his position, feeling like he'd accomplished everything he'd set out to do. Many staff members left the series at this point too, either due to creative burnout or the desire to work on something new. The show started a 4th season with a restructured staff, which also resulted in a shift in tone and style for the show. Some fans had a negative reaction to this change, but Steven Hillenburg stated that he was happy the show had new blood working on it. Steve and some members of the early crew returned to work on the second SpongeBob film, Sponge Out of Water, released in 2015. Did you also know that requests for SpongeBob to appear in Super Smash Bros. Were publicly shot down by the game's creator? Or that one SpongeBob game was so bad it may have killed the studio that made it? If you want to know more about SpongeBob video games, click the annotation on screen to watch the Did You Know Gaming video on SpongeBob games. I'm your narrator, Inagata Devita. I also wrote and edited the video you're watching. Check out my podcast, Kind Soundwaves, where I interview Kaiser Neko, the editor and writer of YouTube's Dragon Ball Z Abridged. And if you're a gamer...
That's gonna end it here. No.
A Disney theory. 2 films theorated by... It's a theory. A Disney theory. 2 films theorated might be related surprisingly. Even though he's a demigod and she hangs out with arthropods, though they're sequestered, they share ancestors. It's a theory. Hello, Internet. Welcome to Film Theory, the show where I go to Hades and back to unearth the hidden truth behind movies made for children. Speaking of Hades, today we turn to an often overlooked, but in my opinion, tragically underappreciated Disney classic, Hercules! Now granted, when it first came out in the late 90s, I didn't go to see it because I was at an age where I was like, psh, I'm too old for Disney movies, all the cool kids are into Digimon. Actually, that's a complete lie. I never thought I was cool. Anyway, finally getting around to watching this for the first time, I was really excited about the cool powers of the Titans and Meg's killer princess song. I gotta admit though, I was a bit disappointed not to see Sora and Sephiroth running around. Anyway, something in the back of my head kept niggling away. Niggle, niggle, it went. Something just felt off. Niggle, niggle, it continued. But then it hit me the moment I saw that fun and oh so obvious Scar Easter egg. Hercules' dad is Zeus, right? Zeus! Gad! Zeus! And that one single and obvious fact has huge ramifications for literally every Disney movie you know and love. Because if you thought Pixar had a connected universe, well then get ready, because Disney has been doing it for decades, and it all starts with good old Herc. Because the man who put the Glad in Gladiator is a literal blood relative to perhaps the most popular Disney princess of all time. I'm talking Fish Girl Ariel. They are cousins! And that is just the tip of the iceberg, my dear theorists. Tighten up those togas, because you will never look at the wonderful world of Disney the same way again. First, to show you how some of Hercules' immortal blood is also running through Ariel's gills, we have to go a few branches up his family tree. According to the movie, Hercules is the son of Zeus and Hera. And if we're going by classical mythology standards, that's only partly right. First off, Hercules is his Roman name. If we're going off of Greek mythology, like literally everyone else in the movie, his name technically should be Heracles. But that name just doesn't roll off the tongue quite as nicely, so for simplicity's sake, I'm just gonna call our hero by his Roman name Hercules, and the rest of the gods by their Greek names like they do in the movie. My apologies to any classics majors with sensitive ears. Just trying to spread the good word. The other problem is that Hera is definitely not Hercules' loving mother as shown in the movie. You see, Zeus was up on Olympus when he saw and fell in love with a mortal woman named Alcmene, so he did what any rational person would do in such a situation and disguised himself as Alcmene's husband, who was away at war, went to Alcmene's house shouting, "Honey, I'm home," and quickly made himself a little demigod. This got a bit awkward when the real husband came home literally the next night and his wife was like, "What? You weren't here last night?" So yeah, Hera got a bit in his house shouting, "Honey, I'm home," and quickly made himself a little demigod. This got a bit awkward when the real husband came home literally the next night and his wife was like, "What? You weren't here?" Quickly made himself a little demigod. This got a bit awkward when the real husband came home literally the next night and his wife was like, "What? You weren't here last night?" So yeah, Hera wasn't a big fan of the half-son whose existence was a constant reminder of her husband's infidelity. You know those two snakes we see baby Hercules strangle in the movie and it's all totally cute? Well, according to legend, those weren't minions of Hades. They were sent by Hera herself to murder baby Hercules in his crib. Awkward. I get that Disney doesn't want to tell you that story for several reasons, but is it really better for Zeus to father...
Yeah, right.
Want to tell you that
You got
story
that right.
for several reasons, but is it really better for...
Yeah, you got that right.